The elevator doors slid shut with a soft thud, trapping me in the small, dimly lit box. Just my luck. Late at night, the building almost deserted, and I'm stuck here with Reese. The silence between us was as heavy as the tension that had been simmering for weeks. I stole a glance at him, standing there with his phone in hand, scrolling like he couldn't care less that I was right next to him. My pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the memory of that night, the night that changed everything. Really? Out of all the people in this building, it had to be you, Reese muttered, not looking up from his phone. I clenched my jaw, resisting the urge to snap back. You think I'm thrilled about this? Could have fooled me, he shot back, his tone dripping with sarcasm. I let out a slow breath, trying to keep my cool. The last thing I needed was to get into it with him here, now. But damn, he made it hard to ignore the obvious. That night it was all I could think about. And judging by the bitterness in his voice, it was still on his mind too. The elevator gave a sudden jolt, and we both grabbed the railing, instinctively looking at each other for just a split second. There it was again, those icy blue eyes that had once looked at me with something other than anger. This is just perfect, Reese grumbled, pressing the emergency button repeatedly, his frustration palpable. Stuck in here with you. My day just keeps getting better. You think I planned this? I shot back, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. Trust me, if I could choose, you'd be the last person I'd want to be stuck with. Right, he scoffed, finally shoving his phone into his pocket. Because running away like a coward after that night wasn't enough. My fists clenched at my sides, but I forced myself to stay calm. He wasn't wrong, but hearing him say it like that, it cut deeper than I'd expected. But this wasn't the time or place to hash it out. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms, my heart still pounding in my chest. Look, Reese, I'm not here to argue. Let's just figure out how to get out of this damn elevator. Sure, and then you can go back to pretending I don't exist. His words stung, but I bit my tongue, choosing silence over another round of pointless bickering. I couldn't deny it, Reese, and I had a lot to talk about, but right now we were stuck in this metal box together, and that was all that mattered. The emergency button blinked uselessly, offering no comfort. Reese slammed his fist against it again, but the elevator remained still, as if mocking us. I could feel the walls closing in, not from claustrophobia, but from the suffocating tension between us. Damn it, Reese cursed, pacing the small space like a caged animal. This is all we needed, right? Calm down, I said, though my own nerves were frayed. Freaking out won't help. Freaking out? I'm stuck in an elevator with the guy who he stopped himself, biting back the rest of the sentence, but I knew what he was going to say. With the guy who slept with you, and then bolted the next morning. I looked away, pretending to check my phone, even though I knew there was no service. The memory of that night played in my mind, clear as day. We'd been out with the team, the usual Friday night drinks. I hadn't planned on anything more than that, just a few beers to unwind. But Reese had been there, and somehow the air between us had shifted. Maybe it was the alcohol, or maybe it was the way he looked at me that night, like he was seeing something more than just a colleague. We ended up back at his place. One drink turned into two, then three. We laughed, talked about everything and nothing. And then, it just happened. 1 minute we were sitting on his couch, and the next we were all over each other. I could still feel the heat of his skin, the intensity of his touch. It was the first time I'd ever gone that far with another man. The first time I'd let myself act on the curiosity that had been gnawing at me for months. I wasn't proud of what I did the next morning. Waking up in his bed, reality crashing down around me, it was too much. I left without saying a word, without even looking at him. And I'd been avoiding him ever since, throwing up walls between us to keep him, and those memories at bay. I didn't mean for things to get so messed up, I said quietly, not really expecting a response. Reese stopped pacing and finally looked at me, his expression unreadable. You think just saying that makes it better? No, I admitted, meeting his gaze. But it's the truth. The truth, he repeated, like the word was foreign on his tongue. The truth is you ran because you couldn't handle it. You couldn't handle me. I flinched at the harshness in his tone, but I didn't back down. You're right, I freaked out. I didn't know what to do. So you just left, he said, his voice softer now but still laced with hurt. You left me to deal with it alone. I had no defense. He was right, and we both knew it. The silence between us grew heavy again, but this time it wasn't just tension, it was everything we hadn't said since that night. Everything I'd tried to bury but couldn't escape from, especially not in this damn elevator. "I'm sorry," I said. The words rough in my throat. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. Reese studied me for a long moment, then finally sighed, leaning back against the opposite wall. "Yeah, well, sorry doesn't change what happened." I nodded, knowing he was right, but at least we were talking. It was a start, even if it was just the beginning of digging up the mess we'd made. The elevator wasn't moving, but maybe we were. The quiet that followed my apology was thick with unspoken words, but at least the air between us had cooled, if only a little. Reese had stopped pacing, and I was thankful for that. The elevator still wasn't moving, and neither were we, not really, but it felt like something had shifted. "So what now?" Reese finally asked, breaking the silence. His voice was flat, resigned, like he'd already given up on whatever fragile truce we'd stumbled into. I shrugged, trying to keep my tone light. "We wait, I guess. Someone's got to notice we're missing eventually." Reese let out a short, humorless laugh. "Yeah, if they even care." His words hit harder than I expected, and I wondered if he was talking about more than just our co-workers. There was a part of me that wanted to reach out, to say something that would make this easier, but I wasn't sure how. Instead, I said the first thing that came to mind. "I didn't just leave because of you. You know," I said, my voice low. "I left because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I still don't." Reese's eyes flicked to mine, and for a moment I thought I saw something like understanding there, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the cool detachment I'd grown used to. "You think I knew what I was doing?" he asked, shaking his head. "You think I planned any of this?" "I don't know what I think anymore," I admitted. "I just know that night changed everything, and I wasn't ready for it." "None of us were," he muttered, more to himself than to me. He ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident in the sharp movements. "You weren't the only one who was scared, Tim." I blinked, taken aback. Reese had always been so confident, so sure of himself. Hearing him admit to fear, especially about this, was like seeing a crack in the armor I'd always assumed was impenetrable. Before I could respond, the lights in the elevator flickered, and the whole box gave a groan, shifting slightly. We both tensed, instinctively reaching for the walls, as if that would steady us. "Shit, what now?" I muttered, my heart pounding. Reese's hand brushed against mine as we both grabbed for the same railing, and for a split second, neither of us moved. His touch sent a jolt through me, a reminder of just how close we were in this tiny space. The tension from before was back, but now it was mixed with something else, something neither of us was ready to face. "Guess we're not getting out of here anytime soon," Reese said, pulling his hand away like he'd been burned. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to focus. "Yeah, looks like it." Another silence stretched between us, but this one felt different, charged. I could feel his eyes on me, feel the weight of everything that had been left unsaid. My skin prickled with awareness, and suddenly the elevator felt a hell of a lot smaller. "So what happens if we don't get out?" Reese asked, his voice low, almost challenging. The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. He wasn't just talking about the elevator anymore, and we both knew it. I could feel the crossroads we were standing at, the decision we were both avoiding. If we didn't get out of this, if we didn't figure this out, what then? I didn't have an answer, and from the look in his eyes, neither did he. "We're going to get out," I said, more to convince myself than him. "We have to." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure if I meant the elevator or us. The flickering lights settled into a dim, steady glow, casting long shadows across the cramped space. The elevator was silent again, the groan of metal giving way to a suffocating stillness. Reese leaned against the wall, his eyes trained on the floor, and for a moment it seemed like we might just ride out the rest of this nightmare in silence. But I couldn't let it go. Not after everything that had already been said. I knew this was the moment. If we didn't address what was hanging between us now, we might never get the chance. "Reese," I began, unsure of where to start, but knowing I had to try. "I know I screwed up. That night, it wasn't just a mistake to me. I panicked, yeah, but it meant something. I just didn't know how to deal with it." He didn't look up, but I saw his jaw tighten, a subtle sign that he was listening. I've spent weeks trying to figure out what that night meant. I continued, my voice low, steady. And I still don't have all the answers, but I know that running away didn't help anything. It just made things worse for both of us. Reese's head snapped up at that, his eyes flashing with a mix of anger and something else, something raw and vulnerable. You think he spat, his voice harsher than I'd ever heard it. You think just admitting that now makes it better? You left me, Tim. You left without a word, and I was just there, wondering what the hell happened. His words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I didn't back down, I know. And I'm sorry, but you have to understand I was confused. That night, what he cut me off, stepping closer, his frustration boiling over. That night you realized you might not be as straight as you thought, that you actually felt something for me, and it scared the shit out of you. I opened my mouth to deny it, to throw up the walls I'd been hiding behind, but the truth was out before I could stop it. Yeah, maybe it did. Maybe I was scared because it wasn't just physical. Because being with you felt different, real. Reese's eyes widened, the anger giving way to something softer, something I hadn't seen in a long time. Different how he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to find the right words. I don't know, Reese. I just know that it wasn't like anything I'd ever felt before. It wasn't just about sex or curiosity or whatever. It was more. For a moment we just stood there, the weight of my confession hanging in the air between us. Reese looked like he was trying to process what I'd said, his expression flickering between disbelief and hope. So what now, he asked, echoing the question he'd posed earlier, but this time it was different. This time it was about us, about whether we could move past what had happened and figure out what this really was. I don't know, I admitted, taking a step closer, closing the distance between us. But I think we should try to figure it out, together. Reese didn't respond right away, his gaze searching mine for something, maybe honesty, maybe courage. Finally he nodded, just once, a small gesture that held more weight than any words could. Okay, he said, his voice steady but cautious. But no more running, Tim. If we're doing this, we're doing it for real. No more running, I agreed, the promise settling between us like a lifeline. The elevator might still be stuck, but for the first time since that night, I felt like we were finally moving forward. A faint hum echoed through the elevator shaft, and the lights flickered once more. Reese and I exchanged a glance, a silent question hanging between us. Was help finally on the way? But as quickly as it started, the noise died, plunging us back into uncertain stillness. Figures, Reese muttered, running a hand down his face, the momentary hope fading, replaced by lingering frustration. I chuckled dryly. At least the building's consistent. He smirked, the tension easing just a fraction. Consistently shitty, you mean? A comfortable silence settled between us, a stark contrast to the earlier hostility. I leaned against the wall, feeling the cool metal press against my back. Remember when the AC broke last summer? Thought we'd all melt before maintenance got around to fixing it. Reese laughed, the sound genuine. Yeah, and Janet from accounting nearly staged a coup. I grinned, memories flooding back. It felt good reminiscing like this. Normal, even. Suddenly, Reese's expression shifted, seriousness returning. Tim, he began, eyes locking onto mine. About what you said earlier, about it feeling real. I swallowed, the weight of the conversation pressing down again. Yeah. He stepped closer, the space between us shrinking. Did you mean it? I met his gaze, unwavering, every word. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The air thickened, charged with unspoken desire. Then, without warning, Reese closed the gap, his lips crashing onto mine. The kiss was fierce, filled with pent-up frustration and raw emotion. I responded instinctively, arms wrapping around his waist, pulling him closer. The world outside the elevator ceased to exist. All that mattered was Reese's touch, his taste, the way his body melded against mine. He broke the kiss, breathless. I'd been wanting to do that since the moment we got stuck. I smirked, heart racing. Took you long enough. He laughed, a genuine, hearty sound that sent warmth flooding through me. Shut up. But before I could retort, the elevator jolted, lights flaring to full brightness. The hum resumed, louder this time, and with a lurch, we began to move. Reese stepped back, straightening his shirt, a playful glint in his eyes. Looks like we're saved. I adjusted my tie, trying to appear composed despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Saved just when it was getting interesting. He raised an eyebrow, smirking. Who says it has to end here? The elevator dinged, doors sliding open to reveal a concerned maintenance worker and a handful of our coworkers, their faces a mix of worry and curiosity. "You guys okay?" the maintenance guy asked, peering in. Reese shot me a glance, a mischievous sparkle in his eyes. Never better. I chuckled, stepping out. "Yeah, all good, thanks." As we made our way through the small crowd, whispers trailing behind us, Reese leaned in, his voice low. "My place tonight." I felt a grin spread across my face. Wouldn't miss it. For the first time in weeks, things felt right. No more running, no more hiding. Just taking things one step at a time, together. The cool night air hit me as we stepped out of the building, a stark contrast to the stuffy confines of the elevator. The city was quiet, the streets almost deserted, and for a moment, it felt like the world had paused, giving us this brief, private moment. Reese walked beside me, close enough that our arms brushed occasionally. Neither of us spoke as we headed toward his place, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged with anticipation, with the unspoken agreement that everything was about to change. When we reached his door, Reese paused, keys in hand. He looked at me, searching my face like he was trying to find the last bit of assurance he needed. "You sure about this?" I nodded, more certain than I'd ever been. "Yeah, I'm sure." He unlocked the door, pushing it open, and we stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind us, sealing us off from the rest of the world. The space felt different from the last time I'd been here, less intimidating, more familiar. Maybe because I wasn't running this time. I was here by choice. Reese turned to face me, his expression serious. "No more games, Tim. If we're doing this, we need to be all in. I can't go through another few weeks of pretending nothing happened." "I know," I said, stepping closer, closing the distance between us. "I don't want to pretend anymore either." His shoulders relaxed, the tension melting away. "Good." I reached out, taking his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin against mine. I meant what I said in the elevator. That night. It wasn't just about sex, it was something more. And I want to figure out what that means with you. Reese's gaze softened, and he squeezed my hand. "Then let's figure it out together." We moved in sync, like something had clicked between us. The kiss was softer this time, slower, exploring what had only been hinted at before. It wasn't just about desire, it was about connection, about finally facing the feelings we'd both been avoiding. As we pulled back, I rested my forehead against his, our breaths mingling in the quiet. "No more running," I whispered, echoing the promise we'd made. "No more running," Reese agreed, his voice steady. The night stretched ahead of us, full of possibilities. We weren't just colleagues or former friends caught in a confusing mess anymore. We were something else, something new, something worth exploring. Reese led me to the couch, and we settled in, the weight of the evening easing as we talked, as we laughed, as we shared more than just the surface-level banter that had defined our interactions for so long. It was real, and it was happening, and for once, I wasn't scared. As the first light of dawn started to creep through the curtains, I knew that things wouldn't be easy. There were still questions to answer, still challenges ahead. But for now, sitting here with Reese, it felt like we were on the right path. We didn't have everything figured out, but we didn't need to. We had time, and we had each other, and that was enough. "Stay," Reese said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence. I looked at him, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, and nodded. "I'm not going anywhere." And for the first time in a long time, I knew I meant it.